We are officially recording now as well, and we'll be sharing this on YouTube so our friend Craig can put it out to the community at large that he's trying to earn their vote from. So let's get ready to do this. I'm going to get the next track flowing and we'll switch right over. Cure mode. Welcome in, fam. Let me move my mic and we'll switch screens. Craig, are you there? Hey, my friend, how we doing?
Hello, nice to see you, PV.
Let's make sure we got you on audio. How we doing?
Can you hear me?
Looks good. I can hear you, and it looks like we got you
Awesome.
on the audio feed. Welcome in, Craig. How we doing today, first off? And by the way, tell me, where did you get the awesome shirt? Tell us a little bit about that shirt, if you would. Start us off with that.
Okay, so if you know Twitch, you know Hassan Piker probably, and this is one of his merch t-shirts. It's really about the effects of blowback in terms of our foreign policy in the United States and how it inevitably always comes back to haunt us in some way. It's a union-made shirt and a union-printed shirt. I am in support of unions. That's part of my platform, and I think that that's the way to the future.
Nice. I'm a former teachers union person myself for 20 long years, and very supportive of unions as well. Union strong. Have you been a union member in the past, or are you currently a union member at all?
No, but I've been incredibly supportive of it because I work in political campaigns, so I help candidates try to get the endorsements from unions. So I'm very much in tune with what the needs and issues are with a variety of different unions in our state.
That's awesome, my friend. So this is kind of a roundabout way we got to do this. I don't know. Do you remember how this was originally planned, this whole interview thing? Can you tell folks about the original plan for this, and then tell me a little bit about how it ended up being you and how that all went down?
Yeah. So for the last 20 years, I've tried to help elect Democrats up and down the ballot in the state. I started out as a field organizer for Barack Obama, fresh out of high school. This was something that I definitely knew that I wanted to continue to do. And so I went on and graduated from Shippensburg University with a political science degree, and then started my campaign work. I've been trying to elect Democrats in the state, and have been kind of increasingly frustrated by a system that I think is outdated and doesn't really reflect people's preferences. And especially it kind of pushes out independent voters and unaffiliated voters. And so I've been a very big proponent of electoral reforms like ranked choice voting and special elections for state legislative vacancies and public financing for elections, because I think that those are ways that we can get the influence of money out of our politics and also give voters within our state a more meaningful voice.
That's awesome, my friend. That's one thing I actually wanted to go ahead and touch on right away, if that's cool with you, is the whole concept of electoral reform. You, in a lot of the questions that we kind of put out there prior to, just to kind of get the conversation rolling, you seem to have a lot of elements of electoral reform in there. Tell us about some of your basic kind of platforms on electoral reform for the state of Maryland. What they are, where they come from, what you're trying to achieve, kind of in a nutshell for us, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So one of my papers that I produced when I was in college, it involved proportional voting. And I was curious about why it seemed that, particularly within this country, that more and more voters were feeling like their government wasn't being responsive to their needs. It wasn't hearing them out, and they didn't feel like they're having a voice. And so what I was looking at is, well, it's, what is the root cause of this? And so I looked at a host of different countries all across the world. And what I found was that as a system or electoral system within a country became more proportional, people felt like their government was more responsive to them. They felt like they had a say. They felt like their needs were being met. And this was across many different data points, including, economy, well-being, life expectancy, everything. And so it really got me thinking, because as I've been in politics for the last 20 years, I've seen us encourage more and more candidates running for office. And what we're having happen in a lot of our primaries now is we're having a host of different candidates that are getting a significant percentage of the vote, but the ultimate winner is skirting by with only 20 to 30% of the vote. And what that effectively means is the winners of the primary are not being supported by upwards of 70% of the voters. And in our first past the post system, where it doesn't matter if you have a majority or not, it's whoever has the most votes, that allows extremist views to take root, and it doesn't allow collaboration between candidates that would otherwise be 90 to 99% the same on a host of different issues. And so ranked choice voting is a way that we can solve that issue, and specifically proportional ranked choice voting.
Sorry, that's awesome. I was just checking some levels. I was looking like maybe we were getting some double feedback on the mixer and your audio in, but I think hopefully we're okay. I don't think we're losing anybody, so I think we're okay. I was just checking everything. That's awesome. One thing I wanted you to point out real quick that I learned the other day from you was that Maryland is one of only 6 states that has kind of what in their current kind of political elected office holder framework. Can you explain that to folks? Because I found that really fascinating.
Yeah. So this is another part of the electoral reform that I really want to push specifically in Maryland. So currently we are one of only 6 states in the entire country that when there's a legislative vacancy on the state level, we don't have a special election no matter how much of the term remains. And so what you see is now a backroom deal appointment process where the central committees decide based on whatever the party is of the person that's vacated the seat. They get to decide who they nominate, and then the governor ultimately appoints that person. And it's actually a very bipartisan issue, because right now we have Governor Wes Moore. He's a Democrat that represents our state for governor. And, he appoints people from within the General Assembly. And then for state level office, or, within his administration. And then instead of voters getting to say who replace him, it's the central committees that get to really have the say in it. And my whole thing is, if we're going to be talking about defending our democracy and fighting against authoritarianism on the federal level, then we can't be afraid to have elections within our own party. And it like I said, it's a very bipartisan issue, because when we have a Republican governor, the same thing happened. And it's very disappointing within this last legislative session that the General Assembly decided to put a poison component into a bill that would have put special elections in our state. And my only take is that it's a coverage for some people within the General Assembly that don't believe that we should have special elections. And that's very concerning. The states of Virginia to our south and to our north, Pennsylvania, they both have special elections for state legislative vacancies. I think if they can have it, then the blue state of Maryland can have it.
Yeah, exactly. And I wanted to bring up something I mentioned with you yesterday about that kind of same fact. We have we're a very red state where I'm from, Montana. We've been kind of very purple. We've been very progressive in the past. We were the first to elect a woman to Congress. However, the recent days are very, very aligned with hardline GOP stances. And so we currently have 2 representatives in Congress for the first time in a long time, by the way. Montana was always one. And both of them are Republican, and both of our senators are Republican. Well, one, Ryan Zinke, of course, the former interior head for Trump in his first term, decided that he went back to the House, and now he decided he's retiring this term. He's not going to rerun because of the toxicity, I think. And then we also have Senator Steve Daines, who decided to also not rerun, which was kind of very much a surprise. He had already filed and was all ready to go. What is concerning, I would say, is that for both of them, they waited until the very last minute. So basically, the ballots or the primaries were already decided, and instead of letting their own GOP voters decide who should be the new candidate for them as a replacement, basically by Zinke and Daines waiting until the last minute, allows them to handpick the people that are going to now step into the ballot for them. And I think that speaks very similar to what you're talking about. How do you see that? And do you see that as a problem in Maryland, or do you see that as a general problem across the states? What are you seeing?
It's another bipartisan issue, unfortunately. You see Representative Chuy Garcia out in Illinois doing a very similar pattern of waiting until the last minute to decide not to run for re-election so that only his chief of staff was able to file in time. I'll be very blunt with you in terms of the vacancy that I'm running for right now. It was a very similar situation. The current incumbent, one of the current incumbents, because this is a multi-member district, we have 3 delegates that represent District 22. But one of the incumbents, Nicole Williams, had decided to run for Congress in the district next to us. Since then, she's decided to suspend her campaign, but she waited to tell the public until February 23rd, which was the day before the filing deadline. I supported Nicole in what she was doing in the General Assembly. I think that she was doing a really fantastic job in getting really important bills passed. And if she had decided to run for re-election for this particular seat, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now. But I do have a problem in the way in which this was all orchestrated, because it feels like, again, they didn't want to have a robust, fair, and open primary. And District 22 is in Congressional District 4. And Congressional District 4 in Maryland now is tied for the second most Democratic-leaning district in the entire country. This is an incredibly progressive area. It's represented by a lot of young people. When I go out and talk to folks, they feel like they're not being heard by their current representatives. And when you talk to just ordinary Americans now, upwards of 45% of folks are identifying as independent. Now, the majority of them are leaning towards the Democrats. But because of shenanigans like we're seeing in your state, in Illinois, and in Maryland, and it's happening other places too. I mean, the seat that Nicole was running for is to replace Steny Hoyer in the House. And, I really don't believe that some of the older leadership actually believe in having robust primaries. And you can see that with how the DCCC is putting their thumbs on some of these open contested races. And so, again, I think you can't be telling people that we need to be defending democracy and saying that elections are important, but then thwarting them behind the scenes. And so I was tired of having to deal with this behind the scenes, and that was kind of a lot of my impetus for running for this seat, because I believe people should have a choice.
That's awesome. And by the way, I just want to say, kudos and wow. I was a government teacher for 20 years, and my students a lot of them would always ask me, like, aren't you just going to run for office someday? And I just said that it was just something that never had any interest in me. I was more into teaching other people about civics and getting them involved. And I felt like that was really my part in it. And I don't know that I personally would have been as energized to actually be in office, because I feel like my reach was better in the classroom. But again, a very different situation. But above all, I always said, I'll give anybody kudos to running for office, because it is not easy. It can be brutal. It can not be fun on your private life. So, kudos to you for taking that chance and stepping up when you felt that other people weren't doing it. I want to shift gears just a tiny little bit. We're going to bounce around a little. I asked you in our kind of pre-conversation to identify a couple parts of the Constitution that were your favorite parts. Do you remember what those were off the top of your head, and what it is about them? If not, I can refresh you.
I I need a refresher. That was a little bit of a
I know it was. It was a couple weeks ago. So one of them was the 14th Amendment, Section 3, and you wrote the insurrection clause. Tell us a little bit about your passion for that.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, how could I forget that? I fundamentally don't believe that Trump should have been allowed to run in 2024 based on what they did in 2020 on January 6th.
I would wholeheartedly agree. I will never forget watching that live with my students. Two of the darkest days in my teaching. One was January 6th. The other was 2 weeks into teaching was 9/11. The other one that you identified was the 23rd Amendment, Section 1. Can you refresh me on that off the top of your head? I'm trying to go back. It's been a few years since I've been in the deep into the Constitution. I believe it has something to do with presidential elections. Is that right?
Yes. So I'm just pulling it up so I can read it.
Sounds good.
So I said the 23rd, Section 1. The district constituting the seat of government of the United States shall appoint in such manner as the Congress may direct a number of electors of president and vice president equal to the number of senators and representatives in Congress to which the district would be entitled to if it were a state, but in no event more than the least populous state. They shall be in addition to those appointed by the states, but they shall be considered, for the purposes of the election of president and vice president, to be electors appointed to a state. And they shall meet in the district and perform such duties as provided by the 12th Article of Amendment. Really, this gets to the heart of DC being a state. I
was just about to ask that. I was going to say, what are your thoughts on DC being a state? Because we always had great conversations on that in my class.
Yeah, I've signed the DC statehood pledge. It is a form of disenfranchisement that predominantly affects minorities, and it's just fundamentally unfair. How can we just determine that these people don't have fundamental rights to have representation in Congress? But yet, the 23rd Amendment, we said that it was, important enough for president and vice president. Well, as a constitutional person, I know that Article 1, supremacy, Congress has a lot of power. Why can't we give the residents of DC an actual say in that?
Yeah, to me, it always seemed like a no-brainer. My kids always seemed to think it was a no-brainer, especially when you do add them into the electoral college math. It seems like, well, why don't they actually get a vote in Congress then? It was always fantastic to hear kids think about places like Puerto Rico or Guam and so forth. They can serve in our military, they can, everything else, but sorry, you can't vote. You can't have a say in what actually happens to your places. Okay.
And what's even more what's even more troubling on that, though, is that DC has had votes on it, and they want to have this right, and they're just continuously denied because the way that our Constitution wrote up the district, Congress has ultimate say over basically everything that happens in DC, and where I live is just on the suburbs, so what happens in DC has a tremendous influence on this area.
Absolutely. Do you feel like, so this kind of goes off into a side shoot from some of our, prepared conversations or background conversations. But on this note, do you feel like this is just another example of a very entrenched two-party system that no matter how much they don't like each other, they definitely don't want anybody else to play?
Yes, 100%. I think that public service should be a full-time position. Currently in this state, we treat it as a part-time position. We have our session in the General Assembly is only 90 days. And the only reason the way it's that way is because of historically how long it took to get from Western Maryland to Annapolis and farm crop cycles. And it puts us at a tremendous disadvantage when the federal government is doing all these things that affect our state so tremendously. We have so many federal workers now that have been furloughed, doged off, or wondering if they're going to be able to keep their jobs. And my whole thing is public service should be first about serving the voters. And we're at a disadvantage when we're only in a 90-day session. We're at a disadvantage when we have members of our current General Assembly that are registered federal lobbyists for companies like Oracle. And then they go turn around and run for Congress and get backed by pretty much the entire establishment. And I don't know if you've heard the stats recently about data centers and AI and how toxic they are. But now the idea of having a data center in your backyard is more toxic than having a nuclear power plant. 7 out of 10 Americans don't want them.
Yeah, we've got several people running for office here in Montana that are really in the hot seat because they have been kind of not, I want to say all on board, but they've been largely supportive of bringing jobs to Montana through AI. And yet everybody is like, hold on. We just entered a water drought in Montana in May. And people know that AI data centers are huge water hogs because they need it for cooling their processors. And the public is not dumb on this, and yet they also don't seem to be heard very much on this. Speaking of the public, let's talk a little bit about the people you want to serve. Because we're talking about some national stuff in here, but right here, it's on the screen. It says Maryland 22nd, right? State delegate. That's what you're running for. A couple things that you talked about in your legislative goals if you were to serve. Let's start with the first one. And I'm just kind of curious on your thoughts on introducing legislation for this, how you would expect to maybe get support and where the support even is for it. And that would be the $25 an hour minimum wage in Maryland. Can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So MIT has a really great calculator that they've put out that you can go by different location and see what the average or base salary or wage would be to be able to support a single person in single 1-bedroom apartment, and sustain themselves at base level. And in our county, Prince George's County, Maryland, that's to be able to sustain yourself as a single person like that, you need $27 an hour. And so my thing is we need to be making it so that people are earning a living wage. We don't need people working themselves to death and not being able to enjoy life. And in terms of support for these pieces of legislation, they have incredible broad-based support from pretty much every union, because most of our hard-fought labor rights have been earned by unions in terms of the 40-hour work week, our weekends, child labor laws, protections against retaliation for collective bargaining. I fundamentally view that the way out of our affordability crisis is through strengthening our worker protections, strengthening collective bargaining rights. Currently, our teachers and librarians in the state can't strike. I graduated from Shippensburg University, which is a state school in Pennsylvania, and they're represented by, or the faculty are represented by a union called APSCIF. And when I was enrolled there, they decided to go on strike for the first time historically. And I don't think that they would have got the concessions in the contract that they got if they hadn't been able to do that. I view that we shouldn't be placing the burden of, because Maryland is currently facing a deficit like many states, because we have been cut off funds from the federal level. Our federal workforce has been completely decimated. And so we're in for, challenging times. And I don't think that those challenging times the brunt of that should be bared by working class families and people that are just struggling to get by already. And that's where a lot of my focus is going to be on.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Let's see here. I wanted to go back up to your topics here that you talked about. One of them I wanted you to explain a little bit, because I feel like this is probably something that you deal with way more in the state of Maryland in the DC suburbs than I would here in Montana. You talked about banning algorithmic rent price fixing software and electronic labeling systems in stores. The second one I'm definitely not familiar with. The first one just a little bit. Could you expand on your ideas on that a little bit?
Yes. So I am the only renter in my race. I've been a renter my entire adult life since I moved out of home. And so when I originally moved down here, I was quoted a rate for what my rent would be month to month. And before I signed the contract, they were like, this is only valid for today. If you come back tomorrow, you're going to get a different rate. And at the time, I didn't think anything of it. I was like, okay, that's weird. But it turns out that many large corporation property management firms are using a software called RealPage. And what they were doing was they were basically behind the scenes using AI and data to collude so that they could get the highest rent market price from renters. And it's just, in my opinion, it's just another example of corporations trying to collude against working class folks. We're already struggling to get by. And then for them to use manipulative tactics like this to create a false sense of urgency to get you to sign that lease, I think it's predatory. In the state of Maryland, our attorney general found multiple property management firms guilty of using this software illegally. But I think that the software itself should be banned because, again, it hurts those of us that are struggling the most.
Now, in banning such software, would you need to offer like alternative legislation then in its place, or are you planning on saying this is what we should do in its place rather than just a straight ban? Or do you feel like a ban itself is the solution and the market not having that in place anymore would resolve itself? Tell us a little bit on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I don't think that the practice should be allowed. You shouldn't be allowed to use data in such a way that you're comparing what other apartment complexes are offering, and the companies have access to this data that the consumer doesn't have access to, and that puts them at a disadvantage. So it's more about not necessarily I know I said ban the software, but it's about banning the specific part of the software that allows them to do that.
Thank you for the clarification. Let's segue away from politics for a little bit and talk about a little bit about you, a little bit about your life and your interests and so forth. Might even quiz you a little bit if that's cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, you mentioned some books. One of the things I wanted to get a sense of was like, what do you read and what influences you? And I just want to talk about I want you to just briefly tell me or tell our listeners about the top two that you listed. You listed Native Son by Richard Wright and The Stranger by Albert Camus. Could you tell us just a little bit about those books and why they influence you so much?
Yeah, so Richard Wright, Native Son, the whole premise of it is the idea that society can basically force an individual into certain circumstances that are beyond their control. And in particularly, this was looking at, I believe it was based around, before the Civil Rights era, where a Black individual was working for a family and then through a series of accidents ends up killing a girl, the member of this family. And it goes through his whole ordeal of dealing with it. But the real crux of it is at the end of the story when when he's being tried in criminal or court for the murder. And the attorney's argument was that society had placed him into such conditions that he didn't really have a choice in the matter. Like he was headed towards this way. And it had a profound influence on me in terms of the view of how our structures can influence race relations and how it can impact minority communities as well.
Awesome. And then how about real quick, The Stranger, its influence?
Yeah. So I've struggled with mental health pretty much my whole life. I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder when I was 9 years old. And along with that, you deal with depression and thoughts of existentialism. What does life mean? What is our purpose? And so The Stranger kind of addresses that in a novel fashion. And for me, it was about the message that I drew from it that was most important for me was that regardless of what you believe in terms of is there a God, is there an afterlife, or what is the purpose of life? Why are we here? What are we doing here? And the conclusion is that it's ultimately you that get to make that decision. You are the one that gets to choose what your purpose is. And I think that that's kind of what has pushed me into the direction that I have of public service. In addition to doing campaign work, I also worked as a staff assistant for Congressman John Delaney. And the most rewarding part of that aspect was the constituent services part. Being able to speak with people, find out what their issues were, and then help them find a resolution. And that's what I want to get back to.
Seems like that's what representatives and senators are supposed to do, right? Like listen and talk to their constituents.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So the next question is, we're going to go off into some kind of goofball questions a little bit. Not really crazy goofball, but this next one you can answer with either real people in your real life or maybe people past and present, celebrities and so forth and stuff like that. You're going on a boat tour for a 3-hour tour. You got where I'm going?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If it's you and 6 other castaways that are going to be stuck on an island, who's going to be stuck on that island with you? You can do your best. If you can't name all 6, just name us a few. Who do you want on that island?
How long are we going to be stuck on this island for?
I don't know. How many seasons was Gilligan's Island? A while. We'll just say a while.
Well, obviously we need to get you on there because we need to have tunes blasting all the time. Probably we should have a backup DJ. I think DJ Barty Cuts. I think he would be really fun. Bring in the whole energy and vibes from Athens, Ohio.
Yeah, and he can be on there for a long time. He can be on for a marathon. I get you.
Yeah. Honestly, Chris Rabb. He's running for Congress up in the Philly area, and his election is today. So if you are in Pennsylvania, go out and vote. But yeah, he's also a very progressive candidate. I think he's funny, he's authentic, and he represents the progressive policies that I want to see implemented.
Awesome. Anybody, any relatives or anything like that you want stuck on the island? Any best friends or stuff?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously. So we've got, now that's 2 people. So my brother, Kyle, he's always a fun time. And probably also my partner, Teddy. She works for a nonprofit, and I adore her.
That's a good answer. I hope she's watching. Let's see here. So you mentioned that you might want to have me on the island. I don't know if that's a good or bad idea. We'll just leave it at that. But that does bring me to a question. You've been following the Spin Room for quite some time now. I got 2 questions on this. Number 1, do you remember how you got connected to my Twitch stream? And number 2, since you've been around for a while, do you have a favorite piece of art that I've done?
I think originally I got introduced to you through a raid from another Twitch DJ streamer. I only within the last 2 years did I get into listening to a lot of Twitch DJ streamers. It's something new that obviously hadn't been on Twitch before for very long. And I think my favorite piece has to be your most recent 100K point piece. It is really great.
I really love it too. It's going to be hard to send on to the owner, but I'm really looking forward to them having it. Okay, so let's go back to kind of another offhand question here a little bit. You can visit 5 places in the world, all expenses paid. Wouldn't that be nice? And they have to be places you've never been before. where would they be? You don't have to go into great depth as to why, but where would they be, and maybe a little bit about why you chose one or two of those. And if you don't want to name five, you just name a few.
Yeah, Sao Paulo, Brazil, Tokyo, Japan, Seoul, South Korea, Karachi, I haven't been to Madrid. Madrid would be another one. And probably Brisbane.
Nice. Well, that all sounds awesome. I personally always wanted to go to Istanbul. Although I know it's not the easiest place to go visit these days, but whenever I taught world history, there's just so much history at that crossroads that I just want to go soak it all in. So that would be one place I would definitely want to go. All right. Since you were talking DJs like me and Party Cuts, although I don't really consider myself a DJ, but I get where you're going. If you had to pick 5 albums as your top 5 off the top of your head, could you name those 5?
Yes, they're not in a specific order because that's very difficult, but you'll love this one, Steely Dan, because you can't play it on Twitch, Asia. Of course, I am a huge Pink Floyd fan. My cat is named Floyd after Pink Floyd, and Dark Side of the Moon, Animals. So definitely those top 2 for me from them. And then I think I have to add so to give a little backstory, I am also a musician. I play the alto saxophone, and a really cool thing that I got to do before my grandparents passed away was record an album with them because they both play music as well. And my grandmother,
so awesome.
My grandmother played the accordion and my grandfather played tenor saxophone, and they had an ensemble called Sentimental Sounds. And they played a variety of music from 40s, 50s, 60s. And I joined them a lot of times. And so we did a self-titled album of Sentimental Sounds that did a bunch of covers. And it was a really, really fun experience.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Let's see here. This one's crazy. Let's see how you respond to it. Can you do any impressions of famous people? Because sometimes I try and I fail horribly, but some people can know one person that they can really nail. Do you have any impressions? You don't have to necessarily do it if you don't want to.
Not very good impressions. No.
Okay, that's all right. I thought that just might be kind of a fun one to see if you might. All right, we're gonna do a couple civics pop quiz questions. You cool?
Okay.
All right. I promised I tried not to pick crazy hard ones. So can you explain the 10th Amendment in less than 10 words? If you need a moment to think about it, or if you need a hint.
It's states' rights, right?
You're right. Can you explain it in less than 10 words then?
States' rights.
I always tried to tell the kids it's really simple. And I even counted this out on my hand the other day, but if I go over 10, forgive me, but if it's not written for the feds, it's reserved for the states. That's pretty much all it says. If it doesn't go directly to the feds, then it has to be implied to the states. So, and I always used to tell them, take 2 hands, 5 fingers each, 10 fingers pushing back the federal government. That's not your right. We used to use a little Bill of Rights hand trick for each of the 10 amendments there. Okay, not too bad. Next pop quiz. Identify the 3 basic constitutional requirements to become president. Do you know them?
35 years old.
Yep.
Natural born.
Yep. I'll give you a hint on the last one if you need it. Has to do with residency.
Oh, a resident of the country.
Yeah, for 14 years prior to running. So you could have lived elsewhere, but you have to be. You could have left the United States for a while, but then you have to have been back so that you're aware of what's going on in this country prior to running to lead the whole dang thing, right? Now, on that note, that was the hard part. Maybe this is harder. I don't know. Are there any that you could think of that you would love to see added to it? Because a lot of my kids always in class would be like, hold on, that's all you need to be president? And I would say, technically, yeah, the rest is left up to people. Do you think we need to refine that? Or do you think, hey, this is still something we by and large got to just leave the country to use its best common sense and knowledge to make a decision on all the rest?
Honestly, I'm not sure about the whole natural born citizen part. This is a country of immigrants. We were all once immigrants in this country, unless you were a native to this country. And so, yeah, I'm not so sure. I think obviously you should be a citizen, but I don't think that you necessarily should have to be a natural born.
Yeah, and it could be getting even more complicated with the... Did the Supreme Court rule on that, by the way, or did they just have the discussions? Are we waiting for the calendar to turn to June on his birthright citizenship decision?
Yes,
we're waiting.
They're waiting till the last. Yep.
Yeah, they're going to do it as their... Okay, so maybe that's a good sign that they're going to wait till summer, because usually the summer ones, they go into session. They're not big surprises necessarily. They're just, okay, we've decided on all these over the year. Here's what they are. It's when they decide midterm that, oh, we need to get this opinion out right away, that usually people are like, wait a minute, hold on. Okay.
Like Calais.
Yes, exactly. All right. Couple more civics questions real fast. I'm guessing you're not a fan of Citizens United ruling. So, which Supreme Court case do you think that the High Court maybe got wrong or needs to have a case to challenge its legitimacy again? Do you have one off the top of your head? And it doesn't necessarily have to be the court case name. It could be the topic. Is fine.
Yeah, obviously, the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
Simple enough. I agree with you. I think I know that to me it was always highly suspect as to how a case even got before the Supreme Court, as it didn't appear that anybody had actually suffered any damages, which is how it usually happens, right? You have to have injury in order to question that injury.
And it's funny because they just had a ruling. They tried to appeal the case in Calais, all the candidates that were originally on the ballot, and they said that they didn't have any say in the matter because, well, you're no longer on the ballot because the governor of Louisiana has determined that there's not going to be an election.
Oh my. Okay. You do not have to answer this one, but I want you to give me your honest initial reaction to this question. And you could, I don't know how to best answer it, but I think you'll be able to. Do you think you could name all 50 states off the top of your head if you were asked to?
Yeah, I think so.
It's
been a while.
I only asked that because that was actually a quiz that we would do in class. I would give them a piece of paper and I'd say, okay, name all 50 states. And the kids, my seniors in high school, would always say, oh, no problem. And it would be amazing how many people would get stuck right around 25 to 35 and just be stuck. It's harder than it sounds, even if you have a piece of paper to start writing them down. If you have a map, it's another thing. So I wouldn't blame you if it was tough. I'm sure even me, who had to give that lesson out for so many years, would probably sit here and go, okay, hold on. I'd be visualizing it and easily skipping them over. And then it's hard to get back to them. So I just thought that would be kind of an interesting question. Let's get back to just a couple more kind of cultural stuff real fast. Instead of Mount Rushmore, let's rename it Mount Rockmore. What 4 musicians are you putting on Mount Rockmore, my friend?
Prince, David Bowie,
ooh,
and David Gilmour.
Now, see, that one you're just playing to me, I think. No, just kidding. You know my love for David Gilmour.
Robert Plant.
Ooh, nice. Those are very good choices. And I can say that at least I've seen one of those. Do you know which one?
Robert Plant?
No, I've seen Prince, actually. 2004 on the Musicology tour. Little did we know he was going to be gone in a few years, so that was extra special. Those are really good choices. Those are really good choices. Let's get back to kind of just the whole government side of things. We're at 10:28. You still got about 15, 20 minutes. You good?
To be honest with you, we could probably have 30 minutes.
Okay.
It's almost 100 degrees here today. I don't think I'm going to be canvassing right now.
You're going to wait for a little bit of a cooler day. Wow. And it's got to, I bet you that is not a dry heat in Maryland by any means, because DC was built on a swamp. So I can't imagine that's very fun. Okay. Let's go back. We're going to kind of ease back into some of the political motivations and goals that you have. You know, I look back on my time in high school very, with a lot of adoration, especially for civics. I went on to teach civics for a long time, and it's still a huge part of me. It's still something I do with my Discord and so forth and so on. I was a little surprised by your response, because I asked you if you remember the name of your high school civics teacher, and you did, but I thought it was really interesting that it sounded like you got it pretty early in high school, and in some cases they dropped it. Can you explain a little bit about that history or what happened with civics in your area?
Yeah, so right around the time that I entered high school, which would have been like 2004, at that time the curriculum had you taking basic civics courses around 10th grade. But there was a huge push around this era that, pushing to teach the test, to push up our reading and math scores. And so there was obviously things that they had to decide to cut and not have as requirements. And civics slowly became one of those topics and one of those course subjects that just kind of didn't become an essential part of the curriculum.
Which is, to me, extremely fascinating, because I can't think of a course subject that actually encompasses all the others. There's so much reading in civics. There's so much writing in civics. You have to, if you're going to talk about and have kids debate things that deal with climate change or what's best for healthcare, you're talking about science. Just shocking, but also not surprising that it would be maybe first on the chopping block. Partially because that's another way to kind of have control over society. If they don't understand the civics of their own society, how are they going to fight for their own rights? How are they going to fight for a position in it? So forth and so on. I'm assuming you're probably not disagreeing with me because you're nodding.
Yeah, no, I would say in addition to the social sciences, regular sciences also suffered as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Not surprising there. It's anything to challenge the enlightened can often be the first to go. Let's see here. Tell us a little bit more about how you in the state legislature would fight to expand green energy investment to improve efficiency and lowering dependency and so forth on fossil fuels. Tell us a little bit about your beliefs, your plans, so forth and so on that.
Yeah. So in Maryland, we're in a tough situation because we don't produce a lot of our own electricity and energy, and we import it in from other states. And so I think that a really good way that we can combat that is to invest in green infrastructure like solar panels, make our homes and our buildings more energy efficient. And the solar panels are a really important thing, I think, now, because Brandenburg University came out with a study that shows that our solar panels degrade at a much slower rate than they originally thought. And so what that is allowing for is there's a big, obviously, upfront cost of investing in solar panels, but over the long term, it's paying off and in a much bigger way than they originally anticipated. And so what I would like to see is legislation to encourage the installation of solar panels on roofs and also over like empty car lots. We have a lot of just regular parking lots that are open. And I don't know if you've ever been to an IKEA, but a lot of IKEAs have solar panels installed over their parking lots to collect energy, because why not? I think that there should be a requirement for new construction that if you're going to be having a parking lot like that, then you need to have solar panels on top.
So yeah, it sounds like you've obviously got some pretty clear directions that you think you could fight for to expand on those green energies. Let's move to some social sides of things. Could you explain a little bit about the demographic makeup of the 22nd district that you're looking to serve in for the state delegates, and a little bit about, because it sounds like a pretty diverse population there. Tell us a little bit about how you would like to and how you hope to serve the diverse demographics of the Maryland 22nd.
Yeah, District 22 is an incredibly diverse and incredibly young district. We have a lot of immigrants. I want to say it's around like 35% of our population wasn't born in this country. As a side note, I also wasn't born in this country. I was born in Germany. My dad was in the Air Force, and my mom is from Ireland, and he met her when he was stationed in Europe. And so I've moved around all over the world with them, but I've always considered Maryland my home because that's where my grandparents are from. I think that we need to be mindful of the diversity of this area. I don't know, to give you a perspective of kind of where this area is. If you remember the story with Kilmar Abrego Garcia, he was originally threatened to be deported to a country that he doesn't even live in by the Trump administration. This happened, just down the street from me. That was where he was originally apprehended by cops. So this area right now is very much on edge because of that. Out in Western Maryland, they're trying to convert a warehouse into a detention facility. And it really bothers me that my neighbors could potentially be snatched up off the streets in ICE operations and sent to the place where I grew up. I think that on the state level that we need to be doing everything we can to be pushing back against this authoritarianism and violation of fundamental human rights.
I agree very, very much so with you on that. I'm going to give you a little background leading into our next topic. A few years ago here in Montana, one of our state delegates, state representatives, made national news, or I shouldn't say they made national news, but people made national news about them when I don't know if you're familiar with Zoe Zephyr, but she's a trans woman who was speaking out against a bill, and they basically silenced her, censored her, kicked her out of the chamber. She couldn't even go in and chat, couldn't even go and speak. And we have very, very mixed, I don't want just treatment, I guess you could say, of LGBTQ members of our community here in Montana. Tell us a little bit about where things stand for the LGBTQ community in Maryland and specifically in District 22, and what you would say to those members who are increasingly becoming more and more labeled as others in our society in the most I hate to say it, but sort of fascist ways. Can you kind of talk to them for a moment?
Yep. So this district has an incredibly large LGBTQ population. This is a very welcoming area for that reason. But I don't think that necessarily there's much in terms of to be worried about a protection of those rights here. However, what I'm seeing more on a national trend is alarming, disturbing. I view trans rights as human rights. People should be able to be free to love who they want to love and not judged or ostracized because of that. What I see alarming on the national trend is particularly towards centrist Democrats who are increasingly willing to throw our more vulnerable members of that community under the bus, and because they think that it'll gain them votes from the Republicans or it'll help them electorally. And my problem is that fundamentally isn't who the Democratic Party is. And if we're going to be principled in our policies, principled in our beliefs and values, then that should not be acceptable.
Yeah, I would have to definitely agree with your sentiment. It's been very interesting. I here in Montana, and specifically my town, a few years ago, we had a motion for a non-discrimination ordinance in terms of renting and so forth in our town, because they were trying to make it basically, well, it was legal to essentially say, oh, you're gay, or you're trans, or you're bi, I don't have to rent to you. And we had a very courageous mayor at the time who advocated against it and basically said that I don't think that we're ready to do this, to basically protect these people and just say that you have every right to live where you want to live. It got him a lot of heat, even in a very conservative town like the one that I live in. But nonetheless, the non-discrimination ordinance against renting to people did not pass, and we still live in a state of being in my town where basically landlords can say, well, I don't agree with the part of you, so I don't have to rent to you, when that really has nothing to do with getting a roof over your head. So it's good to hear that you believe strongly in these issues and are willing to fight for them, even if they and willing to stand up to talk about them, even if they're not major in issues in your particular district. Because I think that's just one thing that I find sometimes very unnerving, is that if something is not directly an issue in a public candidate's area, or it's not a direct issue in a public office holder's area, they will just skirt the issue all entirely. They'll just kick it down the road, because why should I put myself on the line to talk about an issue if I don't have to? On that note, that's a pet peeve of mine, I guess, with public office. Do you have, going into public office, do you have pet peeves that you're either going to try and, let's say, change it while being on the inside, or that you are not looking forward to having to be up against in terms of the things that go along with public office holding, like that example?
Yeah, I would say outside spending is probably in coordination with super PACs. We've now had a bunch of different of our members of our congressional delegation that have been propped up by dark money PACs that are representing the interests of AIPAC. And I think that it's really affecting our politics in a very negative way. And it extends even just beyond AIPAC too. You see the crypto lobby and the gambling lobby and the AI lobby pumping hundreds and thousands of dollars into down ballot races, and then in congressional races they're pumping millions of dollars. And you have races where outside spending is eclipsing what the candidates are spending on their own race. You have instances called red boxing, where on a candidate's website they'll have a specific area that will be highlighted in a red box that shows it's a signal to tell outside groups what messaging to use for their ads and mailers, text messages, etc. And what it is basically doing is getting around what should be a ban on coordination between campaigns and super PACs. You saw unprecedented levels of coordination in 2024 with the election of Congresswoman Sarah Elfreth, where she had illegally embedded within her campaign members of Democratic Majority for Israel. And that, again, is a type of collusion that is allowing the interests of the ultra wealthy, corporations, and other special interests to dominate the politics in our state.
On kind of that same line of thinking, tell us a little bit about some of the endorsements that you have already picked up for your race. It seems like you've been doing really well lately. And on that note, kind of connected to what we were just talking about, if you were to go into office, obviously some endorsements, there's some expectations from people that give out endorsements. We all know that in politics. How do you see yourself balancing out and trying to stay as independent as you can from influence for the sake of your constituents, while still understanding that there's backbone built to help you get there? How do you see yourself doing that as a office holder?
Yeah, so it's about building a broad-based coalition. I've been endorsed by two major unions, Amalgamated Transit Union Local 689, which represents the local metro area workers in the DC area. I've also been endorsed by United Food and Commercial Workers. They represent retail workers, cannabis dispensary workers, and grocery store workers in our state. And in terms of reaching out to kind of the other side and building that broad coalition, I've been endorsed by the Maryland Forward Party because they're very much in support of the electoral reforms that I'm pushing that would give independent voters and third parties a better shot at influencing politics. So that's kind of how I'm approaching it, is that I want to be beholden to the people that actually are here, the people that work here, the people that are trying to make the state better, and not the outside influence. Because what you see a lot in the state too is that, particularly in Prince George's County, we don't have a lot of donors that donate to individual campaigns. A lot of the money is coming from outside, and it's creating the problems that we've been talking about this entire time.
Yeah, it's a problem everywhere. Some people have it obviously much at a much larger scale than others in terms of keeping that independence from political influence. So I guess one of the more tail end things I would like to talk about here is that Maryland 22nd, from my research, because obviously it's not where I live, is a very Democratic state seat. There are 3 delegates. Is that correct in your district? And they're all Democrats, and you're running as a Democrat. So tell those out there that you're trying to get their vote, maybe for the first time, or maybe they're more kind of like independent, like you said earlier, that they're looking at things a little different now, or maybe they're entrenched to some of those people that are already serving in one of these seats that you're shooting for. Because this is more of an in-party competition as opposed to you going up against somebody from an opposing political ideology, how do you see yourself being a better alternative for what's already there? Because it's so easy in intra-party politics to just vote for what's already there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is what I tell folks when I go to the doors. And while this is a predominantly Democratic area, I also have on my list of people that I reach out to independents and Republicans, because the fact of the matter is, in this district, the general election is the primary. There's no Republicans that have even filed to run. So whoever wins the primary in the Democratic primary, they're going to be the ones that are going to be your representatives. And so Maryland, we have a closed primary system. So you have to be registered as a Democrat by June 2nd. If you want to participate in the Democratic primary. Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so then obviously you're trying to unseat some folks, because I'm assuming nobody is stepping down. Why do you think they need to be unseated? Let's put it that way. Why does there need to be change within the party for the seats you're talking about?
Yeah. So actually, in this case, I don't view myself as unseating anybody. So this is a multi-member district. Maryland is unique in that some of our districts are represented by up to 3 people on the delegate level. And so only one of the current incumbents is seeking re-election. 2 of them have decided, one of them decided to run for Congress in the district next to us, and the other one decided to retire at the end of last year. So in reality, this is only 1 incumbent and 2 open seats. And so in that way, and on top of the fact that this is really the only part of the election, this is the only chance that voters have in determining the actual direction of the party. And so my policies are based in very progressive values, because I think that that's what this district needs.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I had read that wrong when I was doing my research, and so that's why I just wanted to clarify. So you're basically running. There are 2 open seats, and whoever wins these primaries is essentially going to go into those open seats.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. In our background discussions that we had, I posed a question to you that I think you really liked, which was to use 3 words to describe each of your congressional members in Washington, D.C. I'm not going to quiz you on what those were. I'll tell you, because this is more of a lead-in question. You have Senator Chris Van Hollen, who you labeled as principled, inspiring, and courageous. You had Senator Angela Alsobrooks, new, cautious, and historic. And then Representative Glenn Ivey, Maryland 4, where you live, you had listed as disappointing, dynastic, and unresponsive. This will be a kind of a 2-part question, so I'll give you the first one first here. Glenn Ivey, why those 3? Because the others are positive. You don't have a positive view of your current representative in Maryland 4. Tell us a little bit about why.
As I mentioned, Maryland's 4th congressional district is now tied for the most Democratic-leaning district in our country. But unfortunately, our current representative is captured by the interests of AIPAC. He is completely unresponsive to the needs of the constituents. He doesn't attend town halls. He doesn't participate in debates. He doesn't go to forums. And I have a problem with that. Especially given the historic amount of money that was spent by AIPAC to get him elected in that seat. I'm going to be frank with you. I don't think it's representative of the views of the majority of Congressional District 4. I've been very clear in my support of the Palestinian people, and the ongoing genocide against Gaza is completely unacceptable. And I don't know how anybody can continue to promote the lies and propaganda that are being pushed out only just because they're going to get some money from it.
Excellent. Thank you so much for clarifying on that. Now comes the tougher part of the question, honestly. You are running and people are meeting you, and let's say you win, or even if you don't win, what are the 3 words that you would like to have used to describe you as taking this chance, or hopefully even serving in the state house? If people were to be asked the same question, how would you describe Craig in 3 words? What are those 3 words you would hope they would use?
I would hope that they would find me responsive and dedicated to serving them, and then also transparent. A lot of the problems that I'm seeing now is just a lack of transparency and accountability from public officials.
That's awesome. Do you have any questions for me, I guess? We're kind of coming towards the end of this. I'm starting to run out of some stuff. Do you have any burning questions about PV and political violence and the spin room and all that stuff?
Yeah. So I'm not exactly sure when you even started streaming, because I know you had been doing it for a while before I got in.
Yeah. So I left teaching in 2021. The spring of 2021. I came home to be a stay-at-home dad, which I am. You guys know that. If you listen to my stream, I talk about my kids a lot. I got a kiddo who's right outside this room. I got to go check on as soon as we're done because he's not feeling well today. I had a lot of frustration, anger, a lot of things I wanted to say about what was going on, especially being kind of no longer tethered to the public position I was in. When I was teaching, I considered myself very much a public figure, and what I shared online, what I posted online, I kept pretty much censored myself because I didn't want anything that I did to come back on the credibility that I had in the classroom that I had long fought for, and the fact that I believed that I needed to be seen as fair as possible, which I wanted to be in the classroom. But when I left teaching, all of a sudden there was the muzzle was off. Let's put it that way. And I just felt like I I have a lot to do. So I started, my friends actually talked me into Twitch. I was not on Twitch at all before. I would have never had time. If I was still teaching, I would have never found Twitch. But my friends here in town, a couple of them said, "Hey, you should start a Twitch show where you talk, a Twitch channel where you talk." They wanted me to basically be a talking head. And so I started watching Twitch, and I fell in love with music first because it was the only thing I could really devote time with, was to listen to the music channels and chat on them, because other channels, with being a stay-at-home dad, is really difficult for me to find the time to focus on. So I do spend a lot of my time in the music channels. And so I started my stream in like 2022, or maybe it was the very beginning of 2023. I think it was January 2023. And I did a Monday show where I combined music, art, and politics all in one for a little while. And then I decided that I was going to move all my politics over to the Discord, and we can talk about stuff there for the most part occasionally. And I think you've been there when I've had my moments where I've talked about stuff on stream that's because it cannot not be talked about. But by and large, we leave it to the music and the art, because what I discovered on my early Twitch days was that the channels that I loved, that I valued the most, were just these safe spaces to enjoy what we shared. And I don't want to shy people away. I look at my logo right there behind me, and the one you see in the center of your screen. I see that as the first indication for people to come in and feel like this is a place they can be. But by and large, that's what I wanted it to be. So yeah, you probably caught me about a year or so in, because I think you've been around for almost 2 years now. And thank you, by the way, for your support to not just myself, but to the community as well. Anything else? Anything else?
Yeah. What was your first vinyl record?
Oh, wow. My first vinyl record. Okay. So I don't know exactly. A small portion of my now larger collection was my dad's. I inherited after he passed away. I didn't keep all of them, but I kept a lot of them that were very important to me. But actually, when I was working, I worked a music store for a long time in college. It was a music, books, and movie store. And while I was working there in college, and then a little bit kind of on the side while I was teaching, I worked in the stock room, the inventory control. We did all the price tagging and all that stuff, and the reordering of everything. And so what I would do, I'm not even joking, is I figured out what the product code in our system was for records. And I would find an empty computer that nobody was going to use for a few hours, and I would put in product code number 1. I still remember the product code. It's number 1 because records are number 1. And I would hit search, and then I would come back like 4 hours later after lunch, and the search was finally done. And I would just go through, and I would find which ones our vendors could actually get, and I would decide whether or not I wanted to buy them. And so I bought a lot of my initial collection that way. And then it sat, believe it or not, in my mom's basement unopened for like 15 years. And I'm still opening a few of them. I've got a Johnny Cash there that I haven't opened up yet. So in terms of some of the original ones that I bought for myself at those times, that's when I really consider that I started. Some of my favorites from that period would be Modest Yahoo Youth, which is a fantastic album and actually harder to get these days, but I bought it at cost for like $10. I've got Johnny Cash's later American albums, American 4 and 5, I think I bought that way, as well as a few that were older Johnny Cash live performances. But as for the first record, honestly, it's so far gone now in my memory, I couldn't tell you what some of the very first were. But I remember those very specifically because I had just this box. It wasn't that big. It was maybe like 30 records that was sitting in my mom's crawl space forever while I moved around in my early 20s and got jobs in various places. And when I finally moved into this house with my family, when my kids were on the younger side, I mean, they're still young, but while they were toddlers and new and like 8 months old, I finally had space to break out that box and start playing. And as you can see, I've had a problem stopping ever since, which is usually the problem with record people. Thank you for the question. Anything else?
Yeah. No. What are we playing next?
What are we playing next? I'm glad you brought that up because I totally failed on one of the things I wanted to do today. You guys probably noticed that the music stopped because I was having such a good time on our conversation. So I want to tell you though, actually, that I just went home. I went to the record store yesterday after I picked up the kids from school, and I said I'm gonna go treat myself. And I went and bought, Led Zeppelin's 4 album and Led Zeppelin's 2. I had to get Led Zeppelin 4 because I was in there last week and I was talking to TJ, who owns the record store, and I said, hey, I showed him what I was working on. It was near done, and I went over and he had it in the bin, and it was a really nice copy used, which I love to buy the used ones if I can, and I opened it up and I looked at the art, and you'll get a kick out of this. For those that have been watching Led Zeppelin 4 artwork, I looked at the art and I noticed some things that I totally couldn't see on the picture that I was working off of. But like the trees I put in are actually like a little town, so I just call it an abstract little town now. So it was like, I'm looking at it way closer than the picture printout that I had found. I was like, oh my gosh, there's some things on here I didn't notice very well, but it still is a beautiful art piece, and I'm looking forward to spinning both of those. Margaret Lowe says about time. I know. Well, I think we're about what, 1 o'clock your time. You probably need to move on. I need to get to my kiddos, but I think what we'll do is get back to the music for a little bit. I'm going to go check on my kiddo, just make sure he's okay, but we'll segue back to another screen and play some music for a little bit for those. And you guys are free to stick around, please, in the stream and enjoy the music and chat. And I just want to say a quick thank you to the Spin Room community, first and foremost, because without them, I don't keep doing this thing that I love to do. And I want to say a huge, huge thank you to Craig Hayes, not just for doing this and saying, yeah, let's do this. And it was fun planning it. And I hope to do some more with maybe you someday as a public office holder, or maybe some other folks out there that would love to kind of have a kind of on the fly discussion about what they plan to do or what they want to do in politics. But I want to thank you for stepping up to the plate. I remember the day that you told me, and I think it was in the chat there, that you were thinking of doing this, and the fact that you went through it is very, very noble and honorable, and especially in a time period where I think that a lot of people are so down on politics, rightly so. I would have to say rightly so, that it is noble of you to do so, and it is imperative for people to do so. And I guess that I guess that leads me actually to a question real quick that we can wrap up on, that I thought of earlier, and it just kind of came back to me on that note. We are seeing across the country in all these special elections that have been going on leading up to the midterms in November, a huge statement to the Trump administration, to the Republican establishment that supports it, and so forth. Do you see you're going to be, so your vote will be in the normal election cycle, is that correct, first and foremost?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So this isn't going to be a special election. However, do you see, having looked at those special election results where we're seeing swings of 35 to 50 points in some cases, do you see that this kind of special election energy playing a part in both your campaign, the people that you're talking to, and the potential outcome in your campaign? Tell us just real quick on that.
Yeah. So absolutely, it's affecting people. People are more tuned in now than ever. I've been knocking on doors now for 18 years, and I've never had such a good contact rate where people want to actually talk and engage with you. People are concerned, and they're seeing what's going on. In terms of, the special elections, yes, it's encouraging, but I think that's also why you're seeing the shenanigans that they're trying to do in terms of redistricting, because they know where we're headed. A lot of Trump's people that he's been endorsing in these special elections aren't doing too hot. And I think that there's definitely a shift in the branding. And to be honest with you, I think really the turning point has to be this Iran war. Uh, I know many Republicans. My dad is a registered Republican, and there was a turning point where at that it became very clear with what's going on in Iran that there's no goals, there's no objectives. They have no idea what they're doing. And so even for people that were necessarily not against an invasion of Iran in concept, are completely repulsed by the way it's being conducted. So yeah, I think that there is a shift. It's encouraging, folks. We're seeing these incredible shifts, and I definitely think that it'll be a positive impact on my race and other races in the state.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've kind of been on my mind a little bit, like, because I hate to say it, but we have been in 3 very unique election cycles now for over a decade. And each one presents its own uniqueness, its own changes from the last one. I think is part of why a lot of people are tired of politics, because there's not a lot of what was it Truman used to say, normalcy? Was it Truman? There's not a lot of normal anymore. And I think people are begging to get back to some normal, whatever that might be. Not that I even love that term, but I think in this case, we kind of understand what it means. So it's been an absolute pleasure, Craig. And I wish you the best of luck. If I can get one of those T-shirts, I would love one. Just let me know. Let me know how. I think that's awesome. And keep saving up those points. We'll get you a free piece of art. I know you have a couple of PV related pieces, but keep saving up those points or whatever, and we'll talk about a piece of art that really speaks to you, my friend. Thank you for taking the chance on me to do this. This is something I've never done. I would love to do this with more people in the future. I feel like there needs to be more avenues that are not traditional for people to reach out and connect. And I commend you for taking the chance, because there could be much bigger avenues than my little Twitch stream to go through. But I appreciate you letting us be part of that journey, and thank you for being a part of mine.
Yes.
Thank
you so much, PV.
You're absolutely. You guys stick around. I'm going to put on my break screen and carefully segue ourselves back to the music, and we will vibe out for a little bit. I can chat with you guys on the mic, a little post-interview stuff, and we'll eventually find ourselves a wonderful place to raid out today. Thank you again to Craig Hayes, and we will see you back off that break screen in just a few moments. Thank you, everybody.